Today we will talk about the Satanic Bible, about its contents, about who wrote it, and about what the Codex Gigas is, the book that was supposedly written by the devil himself. Codex is a very common word when you research ancient texts, especially from antiquity and medieval times. It was exactly the codex that replaced those famous papyrus scrolls. So they would basically be books, and one of these books, the Codex Gigas, became quite famous for two reasons. First, because it is the largest preserved manuscript in history. I mean, the largest in size. Just look at how huge it is in the image. Secondly, it features a giant devil on one page, a single massive page devoted just to drawing the devil. The book is unusually large, and it's no wonder it was compared to the 7 wonders of the world in the Middle Ages. It stands 900 mm tall, 505 mm wide, and weighs 75 kg. It's heavier than most people realize. It has 312 parchment leaves, or 624 pages. They estimate about 160 animal skins were needed for writing material. What's most interesting about this book is the consistent writing, harmonious composition, and clear initial letters. All texts remain legible. To this day, all evidence suggests it was done by one person over their lifetime. Historians estimate that the scribe in question may have spent up to 20 years working on this piece, on this gigantic book, on this monumental work. The creator and method of this manuscript are unknown, but studies suggest it appeared between 1204 and 1230 in the Kingdom of Bohemia, now Western Czech Republic. And unlike the author, who apparently wanted to remain anonymous, the first person who kept this book, or rather the first place where this book was kept, didn't care to keep it a secret because they would have left a note right on the first page. This place was the Padrasite Monastery, and they believed that this monastery was not responsible for producing the book. This place was too small and lacked the resources to make something this big. Unlike you, who can like, subscribe, share, and promote the video. If you enjoyed it and want to support me more, become a channel member for exclusive videos and priority on new releases. You'll go first. It's a small favor for you and a big help to me. If you're interested in headphones, perfumes, so you won't smell bad, and mythology books, check out the pinned comment where I leave some things on sale for you. Now let's continue. Anyway, that monastery wasn't the only owner of this strange book, according to the note itself. In 1295, the monks of Padrasite promised the codex to another monastery, the one in Sedlet, but in the same year, the manuscript was bought back for the Benedictine order of the Pretveno monastery. But there, in 1594, the Holy Roman Emperor, named Rudolph II, decided to expand his personal library. And, purely of his own accord, he decided to borrow the manuscript, so to speak, and took it to his own castle. By borrowed, I mean Rudolph never planned to return the manuscript. And it's not hard to imagine why this emperor was interested in the book. He collected many things, was surrounded by astrologers, and was very interested in the occult. His collection included everything from common items like paintings and books to unusual ones like dead animals. And there are some legends that this emperor collected dwarfs, in this case, magical dwarfs. So he most likely saw the giant painting of the devil in the book. That caught his attention and sparked his interest. That book stayed in Prague for quite a while, until the so-called 30 Years' War happened. For those unaware, the 30 Years' War began as a religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants in the Holy Roman Empire, which also possessed the manuscript. But it quickly became a political struggle among the major European powers. It all started when Protestant nobles from Bohemia rebelled against the Catholic emperor and threw his representatives out the window. The emperor, then from the powerful House of Habsburg, wanted to strengthen Catholicism and centralize his power. But he was challenged by several Protestant states who demanded religious freedom and autonomy. Throughout the conflict, countries like Denmark, Sweden, France, among others, ended up getting involved, each with their own interests. France, despite being Catholic, opposed the Habsburgs for political reasons, leading to widespread devastation in Central Europe. The conflict only ended with the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which guaranteed greater religious freedom and weakened the power of the emperor, changing the balance of power in Europe forever. It was in 1648, and with one of the countries involved in the case, Sweden, where this army is said to have looted the region of Prague. There they found a giant book with a demon drawing, along with several valuable items. They were taken to Queen Christina, who had even converted to Catholicism, and it was curious that in her royal library, there in Stockholm, she had the Codex Gigas with a demon drawn on it. But then, something curious happened in 1695. The Three Crowns Palace there, on May 7th, caught fire. As a result, much of the collection inside was destroyed by the fire. Of 24,500 books and 1,400 manuscripts, just 6,000 books and 300 manuscripts were saved. But guess which one ended up being saved from the fire? Exactly, the Codex Gigas, the Devil's Bible, which was saved because someone threw it out the window. And they say it actually fell on someone who was standing right below the window, and that person even ended up getting hurt. And you might even doubt that this story really happened, but it's certain that the book's binding was seriously damaged in this incident. In 1768, at the National Library, the Devil's Bible was transferred to the newly built Royal Palace of Stockholm, which today houses the Bernadotte Library. But it didn't end there, because in July 1871, they sent the cornerstone for the new library building at Hule Garden. 7 years later, the building was completed. The Codex Gigas had a special entrance into its new home on New Year's Day. They say that the chief librarian, named Gustav Clement, walked from the palace toward Hule Garden. The caretaker led, pulling the massive Devil's Bible on a sled. That's how Clement, with his taste for mystery and drama, completed the National Library's move to its new Hule Garden headquarters. Between September 2007 and January 2008, the Codex Gigas was exhibited at Prague's National Library of the Czech Republic. Nowadays, you can see the Codex Gigas in person at the treasure room of the National Library of Sweden in Stockholm. But if you're feeling lazy, you can watch it. The digital edition doesn't have much, and I doubt you'll translate it, but you can check. The Codex Gigas contains the Old and New Testament books of the Catholic Bible. But of course it doesn't stop there. It also contains other very old and important texts, all written in Latin. Two are by the historian Flavius Josephus, who lived in the 1st century, Jewish Antiquities and Jewish War. Next is the Medieval Encyclopedia by Isidore of Seville in the 6th century, along with contemporary medical texts on treatments and diseases. Later, we encounter the work Chronicle of the Bohemians, written between 1045 and 1125. But the Codex Gigas is not a religious or historical book. It includes magic formulas, disease-curing potions, thief-catching rituals, exorcism instructions, and a list of monks who died in the Padrasite Monastery, the first home of our dear Codex Gigas. And in it, we can also end up finding some confessions of sin written by readers who use the book later on. But what really marks the Codex Gigas here? The image of the devil drawn on an entire page. He appears almost 50 centimeters tall, with claws, horns, and his tongue sticking out. This chilling image contributed to the book's reputation as cursed. Immediately after the illustration, the text explains how to expel evil spirits. Another discusses penance and displays a drawing of the heavenly Jerusalem, along with a calendar of saints and important local figures. There was also a calendar of saints and important figures. But there's something very strange about this book. Part of it seems to have been cut or torn out. And it's exactly about the rule of Saint Benedict, a very well-known text that teaches how monks should live in community. It's curious that this exact text was removed because Saint Benedict is a very well-known saint for facing the devil and evil forces. Tradition says Benedict of Nursia was sanctified for resisting the devil's traps. Twice he was given poisoned bread and wine, but after making the sign of the cross, the poison became harmless. It is also said that he was so persecuted by the evil one that the other monks could even hear the insults the devil shouted at him. Benedict always responded with prayer and faith. The St. Benedict Medal Cross was created to honor his strength against evil. That's the well-known small medal that, if you Google it, you'll find has a prayer for protection from the devil. Its origin is very mysterious, but we know it was rediscovered in 1647 in Bavaria, when some witches said they were unable to cast spells. Wherever this cross appeared, particularly at the Abbey of St. Michael in Meetim. When authorities investigated, they found crosses carved into the monastery walls matching the shape of today's metal. In the Abbey's library, they discovered a 1415 manuscript with illustrations, including St. Benedict holding a cross and a banner featuring the famous prayer, Crux Sacra, Sit Miralux non Draco, Sit Miridux vad retro, Satana non quam sua, Mirivana sunt malaquae libas, ipsi venena bibas. Holy Cross, be my light. Let the dragon not guide me. Be gone, Satan. Never tempt me with evil. Drink your own poison. Many people today use this metal as a symbol of protection from evil due to St. Benedict's story. And for that very reason, it's at least curious that the Codex Gigas, with all its religious and even magical content, left out exactly the text that most represents the fight against the devil. Coincidence or not, it's still strange. In the dim light of medieval Europe's monasteries, where silence was broken only by quills scratching parchment and the bell calling for prayer, the story spread like a whisper among monks and pilgrims about a monk from a padrasite condemned to be walled up alive for his sins. It was a harsh punishment to die slowly, isolated and forgotten. But that monk, as they say, had a bold idea. He would try to save his soul by writing the largest book in the world in a single night. An impossible feat only a miracle or something darker could make real. Desperate, he turned to the only entity that could grant such a request, the devil himself. They say the evil one answered, appeared in the monk's cell, and offered help in exchange. He only wanted his soul. The monk agreed, the book was completed, and as a mark of the pact, the devil demanded that his portrait be painted in the manuscript. A striking, grotesque figure still stares at readers from a full page today. In the end, the monk survived the punishment, and his work, now known as the Codex Gigas, or the Devil's Bible, became a legendary artifact. But peace never returned. Knowing of the sealed pact tormented him. Near the end, he turned to the Virgin Mary, begging for mercy. The Mother of God would have reached out to save him, but the penitent died at the exact moment when liberation would have been his. This is not the only story or the only version of the story. Variations of it have spread over the centuries, all carrying the same elements: the pact with the devil to achieve the impossible, the late repentance, the intervention of the Virgin Mary, and the death of the sinner just before salvation. This structure dates back to the legend of Theophilus the Penitent, and later echoes in the famous Faust story. A second thread also runs through these narratives. The medieval belief that the act of writing could redeem the soul was not just a prayer or penance, but intellectual work, the devoted copying of sacred texts. The English historian Orderic Vitalis, in the 12th century, recounts the case of another monk, a sinner but a skilled scribe who was said to have been saved from the flames of hell because of a huge book he had produced. At the judgment of his soul, each letter of the work was placed on the scale against his sins, and it was a single letter that tipped the balance in his favor. This idea has endured through the centuries, like the Devil's Bible, also known as Codex Gigas, Codex Giganteus, Codex Gigas Librorum, the Bible of Satan, the Bible of the Old Devil, the Black Book, the Giant of Books, and the Giant Book, and so on. Weighing almost 75 kilos, written in Latin with perfectly drawn letters, covering hundreds of pages of parchment. Made from the skin of 160 animals, it features a central portrait of the devil with claws, horns, and piercing eyes. But the legends didn't die with the Middle Ages. In 1858, a Swedish publication called Trogoliga Anecdoter or Anecdota published a curious account. A caretaker at the National Library, where the Codex Gigas was kept, reportedly fell asleep in the main hall and was locked in overnight. When he woke, he saw, or thought he saw, books floating down from the shelves, dancing in a circle. They circled the Devil's Bible, which lifted itself and joined the dance. By morning, staff found the man huddled under the table, terrified. He claimed to have witnessed something impossible and never regained his sanity. He was committed to an asylum. Decades later, Another episode would fuel the sinister reputation of the book. August Strindberg, a Swedish writer known for his intense personality and interest in the occult, reportedly took friends to the National Library. All this late at night just to read the Codex Gigas, using his key that opened every door. He entered hidden buildings, brought the book with matches, and lit up the whole room with the flickering light of sulfur flames in the dimness. They bowed and read the so-called Devil's Bible, but nothing happened. The book remained suspended between the sacred, the profane, miracles, and the pact. For some, it's a monument to monastic devotion. For others, proof that writing can become currency in a darker game, where the price is the soul. The deadline ends with the last period. If you watched to this point, please like, subscribe, share, and suggest a topic for the next video.